Can I tell you know, the Pritzker family, they're our local 1%. And they're very active and dedicated to a lot of progressive work in Chicago. And I got invited to the home of one of the Pritzkers to, for a fundraiser for Mother Jones, actually, if people know that publication. And the Mr. Pritzker in question, he loves dinosaurs. He goes on digs. They had a dinosaur, a real one, in their living room. Bob Herbert was the featured speaker. I was backing up to make room for Bob Herbert, and I ran into the dinosaur, and bones fell off. And what went through my head was that Maupassant story about the necklace where the woman spends the rest of her life. I was like, I will be scrubbing toilets in Soldier Field for the rest of my life to pay for Mr. Pritzker's dinosaur. Had I been alone in the room, I would have pretended it never happened.
Yeah, you could still like this.
But other people were there, including a reporter from the New York Times. So I went to Ms. Pritzker and said, I'm really sorry. I knocked bones off your dinosaur. And she said, oh, my house man will glue it back together. The grandchildren are always doing this. And I thought...
That always happened in my house, too. We had a dinosaur fixer.
So when I'm a billionaire, I plan to emulate that gracious behavior.
So we only have a few more minutes. I just want, I guess, a final question before we turn it over to the audience. There's obviously, you know, you've brought a lot of your political passion into your books. I guess I'm just wondering, do you feel that it's a writer's duty to try to bring some kind of, if not, you know, directly politics, like a definite moral sense of their times into their work?
No, I don't at all. I think it's your duty to write what is given to you to say. And I mean, as writers, we're given two gifts. It's a love of words and a love of story. And I mean, some have greater, some have lesser gifts, but those are the gifts that you're given, and you do the best you can with them. I write what's on my mind. I'm not a very conscious writer in a sense. I don't think things through in a really careful way. So what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, the fears I have tend to bleed over into what I'm writing. And then, or maybe it's my own insecurities. I don't know. I think crime writers are a fearful bunch, and at the most fearful extreme is Stephen King, and the least fearful maybe would be P.D. James, although she's had a tough life and she's paid her dues, but she, you know, she doesn't live in terror of things that go bump in the night. So, and I'm sort of in the middle. So, you know, I wish I had Stephen King's private jet, but I'm really glad I don't have his dreams.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was also, my only other question is, how long has it been since the Cubs won the World Series? Because as a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, no, because I'm just saying how much I feel your pain, because as a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, every year that passes, other fans of other teams go, yeah, it's been 44 years. I'm like, no, I didn't know that. Thank you. Thank you for informing me. I don't know when the last time the Leafs won the Cup is, but
now I'm going to display my ignorance. Boom Boom Jeffrion was...
He played for Montreal.
That's what I thought.
No.
He was my husband's childhood hero. Sorry. But that's why V.I.'s cousin was called Boom Boom. Yeah, I don't know, 100 and... We're in a building millennium, what can I say?
Okay, so I guess we're going to turn it over to you. So we have a microphone right in the middle of the middle row here. So just come up and ask what's on your mind.
I remember the last time the Leafs won the Stanley Cup. There are a lot of people in this room that have lived their entire lives without ever, well, as I recall, when the movie came out, gosh, what, about 15 years ago? There was a lot of shock and revulsion at the fact that you had a female being beaten up. But now Miss Salander sort of gets away with it. Do you think if the movie adaptation had been done in the current day, that the violent parts would have been more acceptable to the general audience than they were at the time the movie was released?
The question had to do with the V.I. Warshawski movie, which was one of those weird coincidences where Disney and I both thought of detectives with the same name, but had very little else in common. But that it seemed shocking to viewers that Kathleen Turner, who plays V.I. in the movie, gets beaten up. And would that be more acceptable today? I think it's the way in which she was beaten up and also the way in which she came back from it that made people react, and some people, not all people, react in the way that they did. It's interesting to me. I like to watch NCIS, which my friends in Chicago tell me is a pretty juvenile taste. I also like Due South, and I always thought Paul Gross playing V.I. in drag would be. But there's a way in which when a woman character on screen beats up a man, we cheer, and when a man beats up a woman, we're horrified. And I can't justify that or explain it, except that these are some social norms, and I think that they persist to this day in the way that we react. If a woman gets beaten up and gets rescued, we feel differently than if she gets beaten up and fights back. I'm afraid that's the best I can do with that, but thanks for that.
Thank you very much.
We have had a lovely mystery writer named L.R. Wright in Vancouver. She's dead now, but she said when she was writing mysteries, all except in one of her books, she said, I don't find out who did it until you do. That she just would write along and then she'd find out what happened. So I was wondering whether you knew in advance what was going to happen by the end of your book, or whether you explored it as you went.
The question came out of L.R. Wright's comment that she didn't know who did it until the end, that she found things out as the reader found them out. And is that true for me? No. Other things are murky to me, but I always know what the crime was, who committed it, and why. But I write a different kind of story, and I would say my writing method is sleight of hand. What I try to do is have so much going on in the foreground. I know some reviewers felt there was way too much going on in the foreground and breakdown, and there was a lot. That you don't see what the crooks are doing. In some ways, you know early on who the bad guys are, but you don't know why, and the suspense is created by seeing what will happen to different characters along the way, and who will live, who will die, and will V.I. make it one more time. But the thing that I have trouble with really is storyline. P.D. James says that she outlines in so much detail that she writes the chapter that she's most in the mood to write because it's so clear to her. I can't think that far ahead. I write the way the late, great Tony Hillerman said he wrote to the end of The Headlights on the Road. And so I'm often throwing out material, sometimes as much as several hundred pages, that doesn't work for the story that I'm trying to tell. But I'm never changing my mind about my villains. Rigid. Marilyn Stasio said in the New York Times that no one would accuse me of being a nuanced writer.
Oh, jeez.
And I thought, yeah, well, the last person who did, they never found his body.
Do you have any advice for a young writer like me, perhaps?
Do I have any advice for you? I think if you're writing, that's wonderful, and that you should, the way you learn to write is by writing and by reading, and writing what you care about, whether it's, I don't know, whether you like to write mysteries or dog stories or vampire stories or just whatever is in your mind, because people who write thinking that they're writing something that other people are going to buy, they very seldom write well. It's usually pretty uninteresting writing. So just keep writing. And also, don't let a lot of people criticize your stuff. Find one person whose opinion you really, really trust and get feedback from that one reader. And don't always listen to that feedback if it doesn't feel right to you. But don't be spreading yourself out in front of, I mean, sure, let everybody read your stuff, but only let a select person or a couple of people criticize your work, because you won't learn from a lot of negative stuff, which is what people who criticize your work like to do. Is that helpful? But keep writing and keep reading. There are a lot of masters in writing programs now where, why are the numbers so big of people who want to get MFAs? You know, where publishing is in decline, but they're lining up to get in, and now they're finding that nobody's reading; they just want to write. So yeah. I know that the Iowa writing program, which is one of the prestigious ones in the States, they now demand a list of the books you're actually reading at the moment with your application, along with your writing sample.
Jeez.
Read Margaret Atwood. I think she's a wonderful writer. She has such a versatile imagination and such a gift of language.
What's your favorite novel that you've written?
My favorite novel that I've written? Well, you know, I tend to see the flaws in them all. When you grow up in a household where your parents are always critical of you, that's how you treat your work. Well, this one's rotten because... but I think of my more recent books, Hardball is probably the best. It's the one that's... I mean, of course, Breakdown should be in every home in North America. But Hardball, I liked the way the story came together, and it really came out of the summer that I first spent in Chicago, the summer of '66, when I was working on the fringes of the civil rights work that Martin Luther King had come to Chicago to help move forward. And so it just feels really personal to me in that way. And among my early books, for the same reason, just because it feels personal, the book Killing Orders, my granny came to the States from Eastern Europe. Her father had been murdered in a pogrom, and she was shipped off to New York for safekeeping, and ended up, the relatives who were supposed to look after her, they threw her out on the street because she didn't have any... There was some myth. Someone thought she had rubies that she was bringing with her. And when their son fell in love with her, and it turned out that there were no rubies, there was no nothing, they threw her out, and there she was, 13 years old, on the streets of New York. She got a job in the garment industry, and met my grandfather walking a picket line, and so on and so on and so on. But anyway, I used that as the basis for telling V.I.'s mother's story in Killing Orders, and so that book also is very special to me, because although I gave Gabriella sort of a more romanticized story, it's still my granny's story. And in Breakdown, in addition to tipping my hat to Sheridan Le Fanu, I have, my grandfather he cut for, back when the big department stores all had their own couture departments, he cut for Lord and Taylor. And he could make anything. He lost his job in the Depression and was unemployed for 10 years. But he would walk down Fifth Avenue and see something that he thought my mother would look good in, and he'd just go home and make it for her. And then, no, never mind all that story, but his name was, it caused a lot of friction in the family. But, because he never made anything for his wife or his daughter. I have the guy who made Gabriella's concert gowns. I give the Polish spelling of Paretsky, but it's Joseph Paretsky is in there cutting Gabriella's concert gowns. Sorry. That was really self-indulgent. Please step up to the mic and ask a pointed question that will get me back on track.
It's relatively the same, but do you have a different novel or author that you really admire or that maybe inspired you?
Writers and novels that I admire that inspire me. I think the best book I read last year was The Thousand Autumns of Jacob de Zoet by David Mitchell. And I'm reading Cloud Atlas now. That was kind of what kept me going at Midway today. Although I'm reading it on my electronic device, and I can't find my hard copy, and it's a book where you need to be going back and forth in it. Another book that I really, really admired was Hilary Mantel's Wolf Hall. And, you know, that book, I mean, that is a big sucker. I was going on tour in England, but I couldn't put it down, so I carried it all the way over the Atlantic, and then I didn't want to leave it behind. I would do events, they'd end at 11 at night, and then I'd go back to my hotel room and just keep reading. For both of them, I don't like historical fiction by and large, but both Mantel and Mitchell, they somehow create a language that feels old without being tricksy with those annoying verbal tics that people throw in to make you think that they're imagining that they know what someone in 1500 or 1400 sounded like when he spoke. But I don't know. And there are a lot of crime writers that I still really, like I told you, Crooked Letter. When I read Liza Cody, she's an English crime writer, very under-recognized, but she really is willing to jump off the high dive with the risks that she takes with her work. That's just a handful of who I admire, mostly fiction. Although right now I'm reading as research for the book that I'm getting ready to start work on, I'm reading Richard Rhodes's Making of the Atomic Bomb. And I have to say, although the physics in it is really tough, it is more gripping than any thriller. And I'm thinking, my challenge is to write fiction that is as gripping as his fact. And don't know if I can pull that one off.
We have time for 2 more questions, I guess. Oh.
Actually, I have 2 questions, but they're short. And I will swap you one small Chicago Cubs story. Well, I admire your books because of V.I. Warshawski and also because of the Chicago setting, because I have Chicago roots. My dad was the co-pilot for P.K. Wrigley's private plane when Wrigley owned the Cubs. So we spent some time following the team out west for spring training.
That's fun.
Yeah, it was. One short question. How long does it take you to write a book? How long does it take you to finish a book?
How long does it take me to write a book? It really depends on how easily or with how much difficulty the story comes together. My 4th book I wrote in 9 months, and I thought, oh boy, I've got this sucker mastered now. And then the next one took me 2.5 years. So
that's good. Range is good. The other question is, I find in your books there is what to me is real evil and really evil people. And there are really difficult, VI has really difficult issues, really difficult time dealing with these really evil people. And I wonder, does that get you very tired writing that kind of thing?
No, I get tired writing about evildoers. One of my favorite books when I was a child was The 13 Clocks by James Thurber. And there's a creature in there that Thurber invented called the Total, which is sent to punish evildoers for not being wicked enough. And he punishes, in the end, the wicked Duke of Coffin Castle, who earlier in the book says, "We all have flaws, mine is being wicked." So I guess there's a way in which I feel somewhat powerless. I feel in many situations utterly powerless, and the older I get, the more impotent I feel, because I see that where I wish we were as a society, I mean south of the border, I know it's all perfect up here and glowing, and that I'm nowhere near where the society is, and my vision isn't where most people are envisioning it. And so I guess, I mean, James was saying revenge fantasies are a little exhausting in the Stieg Larsson novels, but I think my oeuvre is one large revenge fantasy, or maybe that's not quite right, but one way of saying, in this small sector, I can make things better, even if it's a fictional sector.
First, let me say thank you for these wonderful books and for inspiring people, I think particularly of my generation. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
And my question is, I've just reread Killing Orders, and in your afterword, your letter to the readers, you describe your grandmother's story, and you said if you were going to write it again, you would probably not make it as raw. R-A-W.
Right.
What did you mean by that?
Ooh, that's a good question, because I don't remember what I was thinking about. I think I probably was referring to the level of emotion in it, the sense of betrayal that VI feels at the end. But I mean, the book was a complicated one for me to put together. The underlying crime deals with the forging of stock shares by the Vatican, which was a real story. It was at the heart of the Banco Ambrosiano scandal 30 years ago, 25 years ago, in which a lot of people really were killed. And there was an American archbishop, a Chicago archbishop named Marcinkus, who was the Vatican's banker and was front and center in the forging scandal. And then finally, when the Italian government was starting to investigate it, he had to stay in Vatican City for most of the rest of his life, because he would have been arrested if he had left and gone to the Rome airport. I was praying for that. But then they finally let him go, and he came back to Chicago. So the story in some ways got to be a little artificial, because I needed to bring it to Chicago and so on. And then I really wanted to tell this story of VI's mother. I think when I reread it, when I wrote the letter to readers, that the emotions felt too exposed, both what went on with VI's mother in the book and how VI reacted.
I don't
might
think
have protected everyone a little bit more, although I might not have.
Okay, well, on behalf of the Toronto Public Library and the Toronto Star, I just want to thank you for coming out tonight.
Great.
And